Welcome to Blue Line Mental Health. I'm glad you're here. If you haven't already, please take a moment to click that like button and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to hit the bell notification so you don't miss any of our new content we share. Warning: this channel may contain material that is graphic and could potentially be a trigger for some. Viewer discretion is advised. Don't say I didn't warn you. Welcome to the Blue Line Mental Health Executive Command Staff Interview Series. I'm thrilled to bring you an in-depth conversation with Chief Heather WURTH of the Shorewood Police Department. Today, we will delve into the vital topic of law enforcement mental health amid the evolving demands from the community and political landscape. Chief WURTH will share her invaluable perspective on the impact of these changes on the stress and mental well-being of our officers. We'll explore how mental health support for law enforcement has transformed over the years, and most importantly, where it needs to go. This discussion is not just a message for law enforcement officers, but for the entire community, as we navigate together towards a more supportive and understanding future. Let's dive.
I'm sure you're probably going to get really similar answers to this, but recruiting and retention has probably got to be one of the biggest issues facing law enforcement today. Law enforcement is in a crisis right now, and there's lots of reasons and behind the recruiting and retention crisis. A lot of that has to do with public sentiment towards law enforcement, the dangers faced by law enforcement officers. Um, People just not wanting to get into the law enforcement field anymore, public scrutiny, oversight, lots of reasons. I guess I'm not sure that people find law enforcement a rewarding career like they used to. Certainly not when I was young, where it was an honor and a privilege to be able to serve our community, to serve our residents, and I'm not sure that exists anymore. And I think partly other fields, and 2020 certainly changed a lot of things for us for many reasons. The pandemic, the law enforcement views, public sentiment towards law enforcement, but with some of the scrutiny and some of the other professions being allowed to work from home, I think that's really negatively impacted law enforcement. And then retention, I think, it goes back to, agencies, because we're in a crisis right now for recruiting, agencies are offering more money, better benefits, and we see law enforcement officers hopping from agency to agency to agency. Um, and certainly smaller agencies like mine don't have some of the specialized units, some of the promotional opportunities that especially younger officers are seeking for career development, for advancement. So those are potentially retention issues as well. And law enforcement agencies across the country, mine included, are suffering from budget cuts. And I guess from that standpoint, our communities, our cities, our villages, our towns have to invest in the public safety that they expect and demand, and we're not seeing that. We're seeing cuts across law enforcement, and it's having a negative impact. So I think recruiting and retention is probably um, one of the biggest crises law enforcement faces. But certainly in that explanation that I gave, there are lots of other things that I've mentioned as well. Yeah, I mentioned it in my opening. Public scrutiny, I think, is one of the most significant challenges that we're facing in law enforcement right now. What the sentiment is towards law enforcement, and throughout my career, I've seen the pendulum swing from support to non-support, back to support, non-support, and hopefully we're swinging back towards support now. But gosh, it's that's been a challenge for sure. Yeah, I think with the body-worn cameras allow a great insight into policing, into law enforcement, into doing the things that we do. And of course, with that comes publications on social media sites, on other platforms. And so we are in the public eye a great deal. And unfortunately, there have been a number of high-profile incidents that have really tarnished who we are and what we do in law enforcement. And that has a sweeping effect about the sentiment in law enforcement. And it's widespread. You know, we often get painted with the same broad brush in law enforcement. And unfortunately, what people are seeing is the negative side of law enforcement. And the use of force, in particular, the use of deadly force, the use of force against individuals that are experiencing crisis, is something that can hurt our law enforcement agency, especially if people don't understand the hows and whys of what we do. But it's our role and it's our responsibility in law enforcement to help educate our public. And so the demands, greater transparency, and I think body-worn cameras do that for us. I think having good community relationships is going to be crucial, and building community trust and public trust in law enforcement, so that when something does happen, and I say when because it's inevitable, when something happens, that the community has the ability to give you not the benefit of the doubt, but allow you time to provide them with information and process what has transpired, and being able to explain in full transparency, or in as much transparency as you can without harming the investigation, and your community trusting that you're providing them with the information, and they support your efforts in light of what could potentially be a high-profile incident. So transparency is probably one of those. Oversight is also, and that goes along with transparency, and how our politicians, elected officials, our community looking at what we do, and what role do they play in making sure that their expectations of us are known and that we're meeting their expectations. So, you know, one of the good things about body-worn cameras is that I think it's had a very positive impact on law enforcement, in that without body-worn cameras, people weren't able to fully see what we experienced. And by sharing some of those videos, and you know, and not snippets of some cell phone video that's caught, but the entirety of a body-worn camera, is certainly beneficial, because it gives a bird's eye view of what transpired, and like I said, not just a snippet. There are of course downsides to body-worn cameras as well, because we have officers who don't behave as professionally as they should, and unfortunately that's not just in law enforcement, that's every profession. But I think that there are certainly some benefits to law enforcement with the body-worn cameras. And it seems to me as though, you know, with squad cams, certainly before I left Milwaukee, there were officers who wouldn't take out a squad that didn't have a squad camera in it. You know, one of the things that body-worn cameras can also help to do is protect officers from false complaints, from false narratives, and really showcase the good work that we're doing, as well as capturing some of the maybe less than professional or unprofessional actions that our officers may from time to time engage in. There's so many messages, I think, but one of the most important messages, and that I'd like to get out, is that we're human, and we feel, we cry, we bleed, we suffer. We are subject to making split-second decisions in often less than desirable conditions. And sometimes they go very good and sometimes they don't. But ultimately, at the end of the day, most of the officers, and certainly the officers that I've served with, get into law enforcement because they truly want to help. Now, I know that sounds cliche, but there is a service-driven character about most of the law enforcement officers that I've met. And we're in this for the right reasons, for the good reasons, and have a true passion to serve and a dedication to do that. I think sometimes we're seen as having a crystal ball and being able to know everything in advance of a call that we go to, or whatever circumstance that we may experience. But the truth of it is that we don't. And that's one of the great things about law enforcement is no two calls are ever the same. But you have to be prepared for so many varying instances or calls. And we face a lot of challenges in law enforcement. And, we do so under intense scrutiny, intense conditions, and yeah, we're human. I think that's one of the most important things that I'd like to get out to the community is we see so many things and experience so many things, and that has a compounding effect on us. And we are expected to be everything to all people, and it's hard. It's really, really hard to do those things and to do them well 100% of the time. And I say that I don't want to focus on the fact that we mess up, but the truth is we mess up sometimes, but 99.9% of the time we get it right, or we get it right in as much as the circumstances that we know or that we're able to see. And no police officer ever wants to go out there and get it wrong, or place themselves or anybody else with whom we have contact in a dangerous or unsafe or deadly situation. It's just, we don't go out every day thinking that the worst is going to happen to us or somebody else. But the truth is it does. And it's very, very hard.
Thank you for watching this video on our channel. If you found this content meaningful, please like, subscribe, and share to spread awareness and make a difference, one step at a time.